The Sacramento Kings had a very active day 2 of free agency. Some moves we saw coming, like Dennis Schroeder's deal being fully reported. Others we didn't see coming, like Jonas Valanciunas getting traded to Denver. I'll break them all down, share my thoughts, and what it means for Scott Perry's grand plan, whatever that plan is, all right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all offseason long. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. And while day one of free agency was maybe a little bit more fun because of the rumors and the smoke and was there going to be a sign and trade, the unknown, although actually a lot of Kings fans probably didn't think that a potential sign and trade of Malik Monk to the Detroit Pistons was very fun at all based off the responses that I saw both on social media and on my podcast. But day one was certainly more dramatic. Day two, the Kings got involved. 3 different moves for us to talk about here on this podcast. None of them overly exciting, but all worth talking about. And we'll start with the move that I think we all saw coming. It's been reported for over a week. I've talked about it a lot here on Locked On Kings over the last 6 or 7 days. Dennis Schroeder to the Sacramento Kings. It's not technically done because all of these are just agreed upon offer sheets and whatever. None of this is finalized yet. It's how free agency works. But we finally know the specifics of the deal of Dennis Schroeder signing or joining the Sacramento Kings on a 3-year, $45 million deal. So quick math, that's $15 million a year. We don't know if all 3 years are even or if the contract is front-loaded, back-loaded. We don't know this information at this point in time, but 3 years, $45 million, essentially $15 million per year, which is more than the MLE or mid-level exception that the Kings had that they could use to essentially bring in a contract. So I think it's more than what Kings fans were expecting or hoping. And I think the Kings fans, it seems like Kings fans are less spooked by the dollar amount and more spooked by the 3rd year. But if this makes you feel any better, the 3rd year of the deal is partially guaranteed. And I think there's a very specific reason why the Kings made it a 3-year deal. I'll explain that in just a second. But let's talk about Dennis Schroeder really quick. And I'm not going to rehash what I've talked about over the last week about Dennis being a stopgap point guard and holding the position down for a year or two that we don't have the highest of expectations for. I think we all understand that at this point. I actually think Kings fans are going to like Dennis Schroeder. I don't think he's going to be game-changing, world-breaking here in Sacramento by any means, but I do think Kings fans are going to enjoy him, right? Whether you've seen him play over his vast career here in the NBA, and I say vast because the Sacramento Kings are his 10th NBA team. He played for 3 different teams last season: Brooklyn, Golden State, and then ended up in Detroit. So Dennis Schroeder has bounced around, but also his play for Germany in like the FIBA World Cup, right? Dennis Schroeder has been a very, very, very good piece for those German national teams. And a lot of people think he's played his best basketball on that international stage. He's scrappy. He's athletic. He likes to push the tempo. He likes to play fast, not afraid to play physical. I think Dennis Schroeder is Again, not someone that is going to be like a game changer and world breaker, and you might not be lining up to buy yourself a Dennis Schroeder Kings jersey. But I think he's a solid point guard that Kings fans are going to appreciate the way that he plays, assuming he plays that way, of course, here in Sacramento on this team. 13 points per game on 40% shooting from the field, 34% from three-point range, 83% from the foul line, averaged 5.4 assists per game. That was all his averages in total last season. Again, played for 3 different teams, started in 49 games last season. And the expectation as of now is that Dennis Schroeder is going to be the starting point guard in Sacramento. Heck, he's the only real point guard that the Kings have in Sacramento at this point. At least to some extent, they've addressed the point guard problem. They've they had to address it no matter what. I know some Kings fans are annoyed because it felt like they focused so fully on that position that they neglected other areas of importance, like trying to get Jake LaRavia back. Although, as I laid out in yesterday's podcast, the Lakers did what the Kings could not and offered more money. Or the Keon Ellis situation, right? Where the Kings picked up Keon Ellis's option and the potential negative long-term ramifications that could have pissed Keon Ellis off to where they don't get a deal done and he leaves the Kings in unrestricted free agency next summer. Like, I know some Kings fans would have rather Perry prioritize some of those moves over bringing in Dennis Schroeder to hold down that point guard spot. But here we are. Schroeder was the guy. He's been the guy for a while. The Kings went out, Scott Perry went out and got his guy. But I said earlier, the significance of making it a 3-year deal, because per the rules of the CBA, if you make it a 3-year deal, the Kings now technically have 5 days, closer to 4 at this point, because this deal was announced this morning, 5 days to make this deal a sign and trade. So the sign and trade potential and possibility that I laid out in significant detail on yesterday's Locked On Kings podcast. If you missed that podcast, I think, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. I think I knew the Sacramento Kings were trying to sign and trade for Dennis Schroeder and include Malik Monk in a deal to Detroit. I knew that before anybody else. I got wind of that yesterday morning. I shared what I could, went in detail about it on the podcast. Lo and behold, after the podcast drops, Jake Fisher of Yahoo Sports was able to put it out there, and others kind of picked it up and ran with it. But that sign and trade that the Kings were searching for and trying to make happen is not dead necessarily, because again, they still have a period of time where they can work out a sign and trade. I will say, though, it's pretty much on life support, because the Detroit Pistons went with another sign and trade option. The Detroit Pistons executed a sign and trade with the Miami Heat to bring Duncan Robinson to Detroit. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't still make another move and make another sign and trade, but it sounds like they had 2 options in front of them. They went with the Miami option, which once again speaks to the lack of a market, or the bad market, or lack of interest in the league right now for Malik Monk at any reasonable value. Sure, there would be teams out there that would give you scraps for Malik Monk, but the Kings aren't interested in doing that. Of course, they're not just going to get rid of Malik for the sake of getting rid of him. I know Scott Perry clearly wants to move on from Malik. He just does not view Malik Monk as part of the plan here in Sacramento, as a good fit here in Sacramento. And I know a lot of us in Sacramento are big fans of Malik Monk, and we don't necessarily understand that and can't wrap our brain around that, but you're empowering him as the general manager. That's how he feels with his identity going forward. So that's the way it is. We don't necessarily have to like it, but Scott Perry seems to have a plan, and Malik Monk is very clearly not part of that plan. I'm not making this up, and a lot of people here in Sacramento have been talking about this. Malik Monk's value around the league is not good right now. The Kings, whether it's because of their circumstance and teams trying to take advantage of their circumstance, or because of any past issues off the court that Malik might have had, or the type of player that he is, or the fact that he went from 6-man to starter, and being a starter didn't really work out in the limited time that he had it last season, whatever the circumstance, teams around the league consistently are not interested in getting or giving value for Malik and taking on his $18 million per year contract. That is the reality of the situation, to which many of you are probably saying right now, okay, Matt, then keep him. I understand that. I've said the exact same thing verbatim on this show before and on other shows like D-Lo and KC on ESPN 1320. Then just keep him. I think Malik Monk is an incredibly valuable player. I think Malik Monk is one of the best 6 men in the league, period. And even if he does not fit Scott Perry's long-term plan, he sure as hell is not the only one on this roster that doesn't fit that long-term plan. So I'm all for, for some reason, so many of you thought that me sharing what I knew about the sign and trade and Monk's situation in terms of his value around the league, you were thinking that I was endorsing Perry's desire to move on from him and just get rid of him. And for some reason, people thought I was just saying, get rid of Monk. He's useless. He means nothing. Trade him for scraps. Never, ever have I endorsed that or felt that way. I would much rather the Kings hold on to Malik Monk than trade him for garbage, for nothing. And it looks like that's what's going to end up happening for the Kings. But we can acknowledge that, but we also have to acknowledge the reality that this team is more than likely just going to run it back. The amount of tweets that I got from people today when I put out what their depth chart looks like right now. Their point guard position is Dennis Shruder and I guess Devin Carter. Their shooting guard position is Zach LaVine, Malik Monk, Nick Clifford, who, yes, I consider to be more of a 2 than a 3. He's a 2-3 hybrid, but he's 6'6". And coming into the league, I think he's going to be more of a 2 guard than he is a 3 guard. If he's backing up DeMar DeRozan as at that 3 spot, the Kings have the same freaking problem that they did last year, which is they are undersized at that position. They also have Keon Ellis, not to mention Terrence Davis, who's still on this roster. That is a logjam at that position with only one true point guard in that mix. And so many of you are tweeting me saying, Matt, it's going to be fine. You can play LaVine at the 2, or you sometimes move LaVine to the 3, or Keon Ellis can run the point. Last season was clearly not fine. Did we just forget that last season existed? So I'm all for keeping Malik Monk if the Kings can't get anything of value for him. I'll side with you on that. But recognize and acknowledge that if you don't want the Kings to get rid of their fan favorites, or your fan favorites rather, then there's a very, very good chance that they're just going to run it back, because moving on from DeMar DeRozan, while not impossible, is very unlikely at this point, because DeMar does seem to fit the plan of Scott Perry. You can't move on from Zach LaVine no matter how much Scott Perry may want to, because of his god-awful contract that apparently Vivek Ranadive was the only one willing to take on. So here's where you're at. So you want to keep Malik? Great. Cool with me. But you're probably just going to run it back with some few tweaks around the edges, like Dennis Shruder and these other moves that we still have to get to here on Locked On Kings. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can be easier. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. What was one surprising thing that you noticed if you've been doing your budget reports, or if you started using Monarch Money? What's one surprising thing that you noticed, right? One of the things that floored me and my family was how much money we were spending at Dutch Bros Coffee, right? Monarch Money laid it out how much money per week, per month, per paycheck was going just to Dutch Bros Coffee. And it helps us make a better plan and understand where that money's going to, not to mention different subscription services, entertainment services, whatever it may be. Monarch Money lays it all out to show us what we need to get rid of, how much money is going in which areas, so we can actually make a plan of attack. And if you share finances with someone, if you have a partner, Monarch Money helps you stay on the same page, right? Without any of the added stress, even if you have separate or joined bank accounts. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off of your first year. So actually, before the Dennis Schroeder deal was officially reported, the Kings made a trade this morning around 8 o'clock Pacific time, sending their backup center and big man, Jonas Valanciunas, to Denver to be the backup for Nikola Jokic in a trade for Dario Saric. Now, this deal saved around $5 million per year in cap space. But immediately, because Valanciunas made about $10 million, Saric makes about 5, so $5 million of space that the Kings opened up immediately. Now, it sounds like some or most of that space was used to ultimately give Schroeder the amount of money that he wanted, or to come up with the money needed to close that deal, because it was a little bit more than the MLE. Now, the Kings, I forgot to mention this in the last segment, one of the reasons why the Kings are trying to execute this sign and trade and move Malik Monk is if they were to do that, it would then reopen their ability to use the MLE. So basically give them $14 million to go out and get another player. So that's why they're trying to do the sign and trade again. It doesn't look like it's going to happen at this point, but that's one of the reasons why Perry was looking to do it, not just to dump Malik Monk. Let's talk about Dario Saric a little bit first before I talk about this trade and why I don't like it. Saric, a 6'10" forward, a career 36% three-point shooter. That's important because we're getting a sense that Perry really values full floor spacing bigs and guys who are going to be able to space the floor, and Dario Saric seems to be able to do that. Last season, played in just 16 games for Denver. So someone who is coming off of a bit of a down year. I am not a fan of this deal. I'm not a fan of this deal for a couple reasons. Number one, I think Jonas Valanciunas, I feel like this deal was rushed. And again, maybe this is what they had to do in order to get and secure the money that they needed to go out and get Dennis Schroeder. I felt that Jonas Valanciunas, you could have gotten more, especially from a team like LA, who I know they're desperately trying for DeAndre Ayton, or the Warriors, who are trying for Al Horford now, right? Like, there are teams out there that need centers. Valanciunas is a very, 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 very good backup, arguably the best backup center, or one of the best backup centers in the league. But he does have the potential to be a starter in the right environment. I mean, he's going to be the backup to Jokic in Denver, which I think is a fantastic move for the Nuggets. The Nuggets also moved Michael Porter Jr. in a deal here recently to go out and get Cam Johnson, who, of course, the Kings are very familiar with because they've been trying to get Cam Johnson out of Brooklyn, it feels like, for a couple of years. I don't know. I felt like, excuse me, the Kings could have gotten more for Valanciunas, and I guess you could copy or take Valanciunas out and apply Malik Monk to the same conversation, and you can relate to how I'd feel if the Kings were to trade Malik Monk away and not get the proper value. I just feel like this trade was rushed a little bit. I don't think it had to happen right now, but what do I know? Maybe it did again to make sure the money was there to secure Schroeder. Making a trade to open up money and cap space is a really hard sell to this fan base right now. And it didn't open a ton, but if we're being honest, the Sacramento Kings traded 2 second-round picks for Jonas Valanciunas at the deadline, had him here for a couple of months, and then kind of salary dumped him. And if you need any further indication that Scott Perry would not have done or made the moves that the past regime, at the urging of ownership, did back in February or March, whenever it was, Scott has made it clear, or at least past comments before he got the job made it clear, of what he thinks of Zach LaVine as a winning basketball player. And now both Valanciunas and Jake LaRavia are gone. I know Perry would have never, ever made the trade for Levine and traded De'Aaron Fox for Levine in that deal. He would not have done it. And the two other guys that the Kings traded for, one he willingly traded away in Valanciunas. The other one, to be fair, he lost because the Lakers could pay him more. But I'm not going to pretend like Jake LaRavia was a top priority. Retaining Jake LaRavia was a top priority of Perry's. I know for a fact the Kings wanted to bring him back, that Doug Christie really, really liked him. But all three or two of the three moves that you made, arguably the only two good ones that you made at the deadline, are both gone. And the other one you're kind of stuck with again because his contract is ridiculous in Zach LaVine. I don't like this Valanciunas trade. I don't like it. I'm sad to see him go. But the Kings did make another move, a very minor move, but a move that buys them a little bit of time at that center position. I'll share with you what that is in just a second. The final move of this very active day 2 of free agency for the Sacramento Kings. The Kings went out and got Clippers big man Drew Eubanks, signing him to a 1-year deal. Unless I've missed it, the specifics of the deal in terms of finances have not been disclosed. I have to imagine it is a veteran minimum or league minimum deal, right? It's not going to be a deal worth a lot of money. Again, the Kings didn't have a lot of space to begin with, but Drew Eubanks is not the the highest profile of player. I don't think there was a lot of demand for Drew Eubanks, and I'm not saying that to be disrespectful. That's what I believe him to be in this market at this point. To me, Drew Eubanks simply is a placeholder. It's not a bad thing. I think you can hold the position down well. I think Drew Eubanks' responsibility is to hold that spot down until hopefully Maxime Reynaud is ready to step into that spot. Remember, Maxime Reynaud, a second-round pick. So who knows if he's even going to get there. But I think the Kings are going to give him a shot. I think they expect to give him a shot. I think they're more willing to move on from Jonas Valanciunas because they drafted Maxime Reynaud. We talked about that on draft night. So I believe Drew Eubanks is here to buy Reynaud time and to be able to give the Kings a viable option and some viable depth at that backup center position, even though Drew Eubanks is technically 6'9". Give them time for Reynaud to acclimate himself to the NBA game. Granted, Reynaud is an older rookie, had 4 years of college experience at Stanford. Hopefully he can be ready for that position sooner rather than later, but the Kings are realistic again. It's a second-round pick. It's not like a top lottery pick. So, Eubanks, a career 39%, three-point shooter. So someone who, again, fits that Scott Perry, Doug Christie, spacing big man role, who can be out there on the floor. You can put him in the corner. You can use him in the high pick and pop. I don't know, no matter who's running the point or has the ball in their hands. Opens up space for DeMar DeRozan to go to work, assuming DeMar's still here, for Zach LaVine to attack the basket. I know Zach LaVine's still going to be here. And this is it's a virtually no risk move, right? There's no harm in this move. If Eubanks only plays a handful of games and Reynaud takes the spot from him, great. That means Reynaud's ahead of schedule. Awesome. There's nothing to be disappointed about or upset with this move whatsoever. It's a depth move. It's a smart move in that sense. But it probably does fit the mold of underwhelming, right? The three free agency additions at this point, granted one of them was in a trade, but at the free agency time period, Dennis Schroeder, who again I think Kings fans are going to like, Dario Saric, meh, and now Drew Eubanks, meh. I never expected Scott Perry. In fact, I made it very clear I never expected Scott Perry to make changes overnight. I never expected him to be able to fix this roster in one offseason. In fact, I've been very, very consistent with you from the second that Scott Perry was hired, that he needs to be given time to essentially get through what I think is just going to be a dead year. I know that sucks if you're a season ticket holder listening. I know they raised your season ticket prices. And look, here's the thing. I know Kings fans are so dedicated, so loyal to this team that y'all are still going to show up. The Golden One Center is still going to be one of the best environments in the NBA. I know it, and I love you all for it. I understand completely if you're sitting here going, God, this is what I have to, do I want to financially support this? Do I want to go out and watch this? This team's not going to be horrible. And some of you want them to be. I'm not going to say they're going to be good, right? Like if everything, and of course, this is only day 2 of free agency. I think this roster is not complete yet. But if everything for this roster as is went right, what is the ceiling? 6th seed? Probably. Maybe 5th if everything goes right. Like we're realistic about what this roster is. They're not bad enough to get a great draft pick. They're not good enough to really make any serious noise in the Western Conference. They're going to be competitive. I think a lot of these moves show that Perry is still trying to prioritize competitiveness and find whatever he can to hold it down this year and get through this year so that he can really start making moves next summer and beyond. That's what this season is to me. That's the lens that I've always looked at this upcoming season. And when you look at these moves through that lens, it makes sense, even if it is underwhelming. But now I want to hear from you. Your thoughts on this day 2 of free agency, the moves. Do you like them? Do you hate them? Russell Westbrook, I guess, still is potentially out there, but the Kings don't really have room to sign him at this point in time unless they do complete a sign and trade for Dennis Schroeder's deal and include Malik Monk. I don't know. It's all still technically possible. Of course, I'm trying to stay on top of as much as I can. Whatever I hear, I will share with you, or whatever I can share with you, I will here on the Locked On Kings podcast. Keep following me on Twitter or X at MattGeorgeSack. You can email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com, to share your thoughts on this day 2 of free agency. Remember, we are meeting the Kings rookies. Nick Clifford and Maxime Reynaud are having a press conference with Scott Perry and Doug Christie on Thursday. And I will have those comments, that press conference for you here on Locked On Kings. Hopefully a one-on-one interview with both of those guys as well here on Locked On Kings. So keep an eye out for that. And anything else the Kings do in free agency and beyond this offseason, we'll stay on top of that too. Plus Summer League right around the corner in Las Vegas. Still don't know if I'm going or not, but I'm excited to see these young players play, including the two-way guys that the Kings brought in. So I can't wait to have you join me on these future episodes of Locked On Kings. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.